So in your whistle-stop tour of Italy, did you go to Pompeii?
Absolutely, I insisted on that. Yeah.
How close do they let you get to like the ancients?
You're pretty close most of the time. You're walking on the streets and you can touch the walls, and
whoa,
it's phenomenal. One of my favorite parts was when they showed you the bordello area, and there's this small alley, and the graffiti artists at the time would sort of put up the specialties of the various sex workers. So you'd see a drawing and you knew what kind of things to expect in those certain, antechambers in the bordellos. And our tour guide made it very clear. I mean, he seemed like he wanted to show that to everybody, so he took us right there.
Wait a second. But during ancient Rome, there weren't any spray paints, weren't there?
No.
Were there? So I'm guessing if you wanted to do graffiti there,
yeah.
I mean, you basically had to carve it out into the stone. It's not, you couldn't turn up and spray something on a wall. It was like a 6-week project to carve your message into the stone.
I think there was some brushwork, actually. I think it was painted. I mean, I think...
and wait a second, to be clear, was brushwork the kind of painting that they were doing, or was that the services that were available in the bordello? Is that a code for something I don't understand?
I'm sure the answer to that is yes, both. There was a PBS, Public Broadcasting Service, documentary here on Pompeii, like the new excavations, and they found original paintings. In fact, I think they have the first image of a pizza is in Pompeii, about 2,000 years ago. So it looked, we think of it as being all gray and ashy, but underneath that there was a lot of color and a lot of people had painted right on the walls.
I like the way that what you're describing there could well be a description of Pompeii, but it could also be a description of a pizza from our local pizzeria, which are also sometimes colourful and sometimes a bit ashy.
This one looked delicious, though, I gotta say.
Hello and welcome to the Two Real Cinema Club. I'm James Ruzeka.
And I'm Andres Larete. And every week on the Two Real Cinnamon, oh my God.
The Two Real Cinnamon Club.
We should be a cinnamon club.
It's spicy.
It's so delicious. We do take you on new experiences, travel experiences. We take you to other countries. We take you to different restaurants and enjoy different delicacies, cinnamon delicacies. And we also talk about some films in all that, and sometimes we see donkeys.
Happily, we are donkey positive tonight. At last, we have seen another donkey film. I'm glad to say. It's deep into awards season now, so we've got to make sure that we start ticking off some of the awards movies. So this week we have seen A Real Pain.
Yeah.
Which is getting nominated. It's had nominations for the Oscars for screenplay and best supporting actor.
Ooh.
And it's a kind of comedy drama. I had a look up. A Real Pain. It was made for $3 million.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's currently taken so far $16 million at the box office. So it's kind of doing all right. And directed by Hollywood favorite nerd Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah.
I think this is his first picture. Am I right?
I can check quickly. He wrote it as well, right? He's got the screenwriting credit, so he's up for an Oscar, obviously already. As a director, he's 5 feet 7 inches, 7 1/4 inches. That's 1.71 meters.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah,
Thank God for that. Here we go. So, when you finish Saving the World, he says director and writer. So when you finish Saving the World was Jesse Eisenberg's feature directorial debut in 2022, based on an audio drama of the same name, written by the same man. With Julianne Moore, Finn Wolfhard. I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Well, don't worry. I'll edit all that together so it makes it sound like we know what we're talking about.
No editing.
So not only is it written by and directed by, but it also stars Jesse Eisenberg. But I would say the main star of the film is Kieran Culkin, who's hot off the back of Succession. Did you see that?
I've seen all 4 seasons of Succession, 3 of the seasons twice. I need to go back and see the last season a second time. It's great stuff. It's interesting that he would be nominated for a supporting actor there, because I did see him more as the lead. He's sort of the focus of the film.
I agree, absolutely. Yeah. He is both the most interesting person on screen and the shaker and the mover and the one that you come away remembering. I don't think it's a supporting actor role. Well, in order to try and clarify that, shall I tell you the story?
I think we're getting into some troubled waters here, so you better start telling us a story.
So, David and Benji are two cousins who used to be very close when they were boys, but who have since grown apart. David, Jesse Eisenberg, is introverted and anxious and perhaps a bit neurotic, whereas Benji, Kieran Culkin, is gregarious and disinhibited and charming, but a bit too much. So, when the two cousins go on a trip to Poland to visit the house that their much-loved and recently deceased grandmother Dory grew up in, they form an odd couple. Joining a small group of other tourists, led strangely by a British guide, they visit monuments, they take trains, they smoke weed. But what is the real story behind why David and Benji's relationship went awry? Will their hunt for their roots change them? And more important than all of that, will anything actually happen?
That's it, right? That's the end of your synopsis?
That's kind of the end of the synopsis, yes.
It's excellent. That's an excellent synopsis.
I do believe we've just saved people in the audience upwards of $10 or $15. I have been reading some of the press for this movie, and not only does not spoilers, not an awful lot happens in the film, not an awful lot happens in the press tour as well, because the same anecdotes keep coming up again and again and again. So I think they have they basically have two anecdotes, and they repeat them to every journalist that they meet. Yeah. But one of the two anecdotes is that apparently Jesse Eisenberg, he wrote a short story in something like 2017, I think, about two brothers who go to Mongolia to sort of find themselves. And his big idea was he was going to turn this short story into a script, and he thought it was ripe for a feature film. Brilliant. And the story he tells is how he gets about 30 pages into writing the script and realizes this isn't working. I don't get it. I can't make it work. Oh, this is a disaster. And apparently on the day or at the moment that he decided perhaps I should give up on this and try something different, a pop-up advert came up on his computer, which advertised Auschwitz tour with lunch. And that was the moment where he realised, wait a second, maybe there's something in this, and that supposedly is the genesis of the film.
Inspiration has to come from somewhere. It's funny because I had the feeling that his character is someone who creates pop-up ads or does.
Yes, exactly. So
worked it in well.
So yay for the pop-up ad people. And another spoiler, I'm going to be a little bit critical of the film when we talk about it, but you know what? Before I lay into it, it is good to see a film of this type find an audience, because it has many elements that we generally like. Yes. It's a low-budget film. Yes. It's not terribly starry. It is a small-scale comedy drama. It's broadly understated. I think it's beautiful to look at. It is not gimmicky. It's relatively mature, I think. I think there are a lot of good things about this film. It's made for the right amount of money, and I'm delighted that people are going to see it, and that it's kind of garnering a bit of attention. I would be happy if there were many more films in this kind of niche in the multiplex.
Agreed, 100%. This is too real wheelhouse material in my mind. $3 million bucks, great. That makes more than 4 times its money back. Is fantastic. That's exactly where you want to operate. I wish the story were a bit stronger. Obviously, if you're on a small budget, it's going to be talky, which this film is. That's not exactly our wheelhouse, but it does what it needs to do. It's making money, so I can't knock on it too much. But yeah, I definitely wish it were better. I wish more happened, and I don't think being small and independent is an excuse to just be talky. And I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think it's that cinematic. I don't think it's that lovely to look at.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's kind of pedestrian in many ways, and so in that way, it's wearing its budget on its sleeve. But in other ways, it's it's got good actors. They deliver. I think the characters are sort of quirky but believable enough, and. I don't want to be too harsh in the sense that it is not a $100 million film, so it has to cut back in certain areas. But I just love the fact that it's a $3 million film, and I don't, doesn't get made, I don't think, if Jesse Eisenberg doesn't have a script and is willing to act in it and willing to direct it. So,
yeah.
So, good on him for doing that.
We'll ring the spoiler bell in a minute, but before we do, it's interesting you say about the characters, because I think there's good and bad in the characters. We've already kind of alluded. I think Kieran Culkin is by far the best thing in the movie.
Yeah.
I would call him the lead. He's not a support. I think I would think he is the lead. He is broadly the shaker and the mover in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he's great. David, Jesse Eisenberg's character, is kind of like the usual Jesse Eisenberg character type A.
Yes.
He's kind of, a bit nervous and a bit neurotic and a bit anxious, and he's, a slightly better looking, younger Woody Allen. He's that kind of character that he plays. And I suspect that he's not a million miles away from some aspects of Jesse Eisenberg's own.
No, definitely not. And neither is Kieran Culkin. I think these roles are easy for these guys. They are, I see that in them as humans. So it's not that neither one is stretching his acting chops to arrive at these characters.
But I personally found the other characters really pretty on the nose. At 16 minutes in, so this is kind of like the end of the first act, beginning of the second act, after they've travelled to Warsaw and they've arrived at the hotel, and then they meet like the other tourists they're going on this little minibus tour with, and I think those other characters are just pretty on the nose. It's fun to see Jennifer Grey come back on screen, who I remember from is it Dirty Dancing? What was she in?
He was in Dirty Dancing. Yes, absolutely.
So I feel it's like meeting a friend that you haven't seen for 40 years. Oh, hello, how have you been doing? Yeah. Nice to see you. But otherwise, I think those other characters on the tour, I think they're all pretty one note, and they have this what I think is a pretty badly written scene where they introduce themselves. It's like a personal statement on a job application.
Yeah,
they speak in these long, full sentences and explain who they are and where they've come from, and it just feels tremendously stagey. It's like a stage monologue where you get the actors to stand at the front of the stage and they explain to the audience who they are before the play begins. I wasn't particularly impressed with any of those supporting characters, and it's not to say that I'm sure the actors have done a great job with the material that they've got. I think the material is for their characters is unimpressive, and the tour guide, who is this kind of slightly hapless Northern English guy, and I really don't understand why they are being shown around Poland by an English tour guide. But I really thought that guy. I thought his character was pretty terrible, actually. I just did not buy it. I fairly cringed every time he was on screen. So, those characters did not work for me, where Kieran Culkin and Jesse Eisenberg broadly did. Yeah,
so they're probably meant to stand out, obviously. But what was the tour guide's name again?
It's James.
Oh. You don't think you have any sort of hostility towards the character because he's stolen your name or something like that? Or?
I think he's probably based on me, isn't he? Well, we should ring the spoiler bell.
Ring a bell.
We'll ring the bell. We'll ring the bell across a Warsaw town square.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we'll kind of maybe talk about the middle and the end of the movie and see whether we can shed a little bit more light. Okay, here's the bell. So we get to the end of the movie, and I must say I was asking myself by the time we get to the end of this film, what has changed? What have we learned? How have the characters evolved? And they kind of haven't, I think. So the two cousins, they go for a bit of a tour around Poland. They have a little bit of a mini adventure, and Benji is quite good at bonding with the other tourists, and David is not. And then they go and visit the site of a concentration camp, and then they split off. And Benji and David go to visit the house where their grandmother grew up. And then they get back on a plane and they go back home. And I suppose the big central moment, in fact, pretty much the exact midpoint, I think it happens at about 48, 49 minutes in a 90-minute film, is a scene where Benji and David are with the other tourists in a restaurant, having had an enjoyable look around the city. they have a little bit of an argument. Benji storms off, and David tells the other tourists that Benji had attempted to take his life a few months ago. And this was the kind of the big sticking point in their relationship and the big kind of turning point. And it's, big, serious, important, heavy material, but I'm not convinced that it is treated particularly maturely or convincingly. I don't know whether you felt that scene earned its place or whether it felt a little bit superficial.
It's funny because that's the scene that I've seen in trailers. That's the scene that this film advertises itself on.
Oh, I haven't seen the trailers. Oh, man, to think I wasted a spoiler bell.
In part because doesn't Kieran Culkin guzzle a beer and then burp and then hammer on the table and say he has to go take a piss or something like that?
Yeah, okay, something like that. Yeah, I think so.
So it's funny because that is I don't think it's the emotional center of the film, but it's supposed to be this fairly deep and revealing scene, and yet they advertise the film as a comedy, like a really kind of a physical almost prepubescent comedy on that one take from Kieran Culkin. And I was uncomfortable with that scene, and it happens, I think that's before they go to the concentration camp the next day.
Oh, yeah, I think it is, yeah.
And there's this odd thing also where they're sort of talking about how much they love Benji, but they're doing this thing that he never does, which is talk behind other people's backs. And he makes that very clear a couple times in the film. He said, I don't think we should be talking about them unless they're here at the table. And then they're all talking about him when he's not at the table. And then he comes back, right? And the reason they know he's come back is because all of a sudden he's playing the piano in one of these sort of adjacent rooms or something like that.
Oh, yes.
And it's very funny because I think is the David character is sort of, he's sort of defending, or, certainly, he's being quite gentle with Benji when he's talking about him. But then when he sees him playing at the piano and doing it well, he storms out of the restaurant. It just felt like the wrong reaction to me. And it goes on to this, it's supposed to be some tension, like he goes to his room and Benji never comes back that night, and he wakes up mad at Benji, and then Benji's calling him down because everyone else is ready to go to the concentration camp. And it was a very odd scene. It just didn't seem like it was written with the right effects. It didn't really hit me the way I thought it should. And it was, as I said, I think it's supposed to be seen as like this really big moment. It's it's kind of a set piece. They're all sitting at dinner and they're all talking together, but it doesn't really reveal. It reveals the thing we need to know, I guess. But it's I think it would be better revealed later without the whole group there.
It's broadly, it's more informational than it is a character scene, isn't it?
Exactly.
I made a little note of there's this kind of very central line. David says, I wrote it in my notebook here, I love him and I hate him and I want to kill him and I want to be him.
Yeah.
And I can really see Jesse Eisenberg feeling like really proud of writing that line and feeling like, that's the kind of articulate and clever.
Yeah.
And actually I think it's, pretty sophomoric and and a pretty poorly written bit of dialogue.
Yeah. And it's funny that, they're all talking about how much they relate to him, they like him a lot, and then he does this thing where he's just burping and peeing at the table or knocking on the table, and that's how he leaves the room. So we're supposed to be feeling endeared to him, but he seems particularly immature at that moment. So, that scene did boggle me. I wasn't really happy with that moment, but then the next day, of course, they go on the tour, I guess, where you said lunch was served. I guess they served lunch.
I feel like we've probably seen this concentration camp visit many times before in movies, and there's kind of only one way to shoot it, really.
Yeah.
And I think Jesse Eisenberg says in the press tour that he didn't want to have any dialogue, and he just took the actors around the site, and their reactions that we see on screen are their real reactions.
Yeah.
And that's this is an important thing to stop and note, and it's sensitively handled, and it's fine. It's not tremendously, it's not earth shattering as a bit of filmmaking, but it earns its place in the film. It's fine. I think.
Yeah, I mean, historically, it's really interesting because the name of the camp was Majdanek or Majdanek.
Oh, I didn't write it down. Yeah, it may well be,
which I'd never heard of. And it apparently the Nazis didn't have much time to destroy things and make it disappear, so it's really, really well preserved. So in that sense, I was really, I was happy that I saw it because it's impressive. You see the shoes, you see the ovens, and you've got those sort of classic memories that are just written into our brains about the Holocaust. And I think it was wise to put that scene in there because we really see what they're what they're going back to see what their grandmother saw, I guess, and what she escaped. And it hits Benji really hard, right? He's crying on the bus on the way back, and everyone else seems a little dazed, but David's not as moved by it as Benji was. So you get to see, Benji's emotional depth, and I think it's related to him potentially taking his own life or trying to. So I think it resonates with him more than the others, which is probably good. It's a good emotional note for the scene. For me, this, like, the film really comes down to this one. There's this one scene that I thought was effective, and it's after they left the tour and they go to the rooftop to smoke a joint, and they're, Benji's saying, I want more contact, I want to be in Binghamton. And Dave's character says, he's just amazed that his cousin Benji would even consider taking his life, because he's the kind of personality that just lights up a room. He's magnetic personality. We've just seen all these people on the tour hug Benji goodbye and sort of just say, hey, see you later, Dave. Nice to see you, Dave.
Which is the best gag in the film, isn't it?
So you see, he's got this magnetic personality, and he just doesn't understand why he would take his own life. And now that I'm on that list of people who've lost a friend to suicide, I understood completely. And for me, obviously, I have that connection. And so that was the emotional center of the film for me. And it seems like the whole film was to sort of set up that one scene. And you see it come back to Benji maybe in the final image a little bit, like he might be thinking about that too, as like he is a good person, and that might be the one thing we see change in this whole film. But for me, that was the heart of the film. It takes a long time to get there, and I don't know did you have the same reaction to that? Like, I thought that was money in the bank. I thought that was a well-written scene. It was a great scene. They're finally reconnecting. They're not going to, Dave's not going to go to Binghamton to visit him, and Benji's not going to go to New York City to visit him, but a little bit of truth comes out, and it's a tiny moment in so many ways, but I think it affects certain viewers as being right on, spot on, really emotional and touching.
I remember the scene that you're talking about very vividly. For me, crass as I am, it didn't quite do enough, I think.
And that's fine.
I was waiting for there to be like a proper crisis, and it remains a little bit too polite, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like it could have gone a bit further, but that is my big note for the entire film.
Yeah.
I sort of came away from the film, I felt like I was mentally listing all the opportunities that were not realised. I feel like there were so many opportunities, so many moments where things could move it up a little bit of a notch, and we could learn something more about these characters, because this is now like they're going through something properly stressful.
Yeah.
Fairly early on in the movie, all the tour go on a train trip, but David and Benji end up sitting on their own. David falls off to sleep, and so Benji lets them miss their stop. Yeah. And I was thinking, right, well, this is when this film really begins now. Now they're going to be lost in Poland. They'll have no money, and they'll have no passports or whatever, and it's going to be like a bit of an adventure. And when you put people under stress, you really learn about their personalities. But no, they just they have this little tiny micro adventure where they get on a train going back the other way, and they meet everybody who's been waiting for them at the station, and sort of nothing happens. I was waiting for all of them to sleep with Marcia, like the woman on the tour, or when they go and visit Dory's house, and they decide, well, let's put some stones on the stoop as a kind of way of remembering her. And then this neighbour kind of leans over the balcony and says, "You can't do that." And I was waiting for them. Maybe they were going to have lunch with that guy, who would then sort of tell them something about something about their past that they didn't know. Or maybe the woman who lives in the house now would come out and they would learn something. Often you talk about Hitchcock describing films as life with the boring bits left out. And this did strike me as this is like a little slice of life, but they kept a lot of the boring bits in. I felt like there was fun that was promised and then not delivered. So I can understand why it's an artistic decision that you decide not to go big and not to travel down those particular pathways, but I felt a little bit disappointed.
Spot on, James. I think real craft comes out of taking those boring moments and making them into something very interesting, because that's when you're surprised, right? You're pleasantly surprised, and none of the boring moments go anywhere. And I think in your very opening statement where you said, like, these characters don't change, not much happens, I think that really sums it up. To the point where even the final scene is just sort of a replay of the opening scene.
It is,
you feel like, oh God, he hasn't changed at all. And that, I think other scene that you mentioned early on, it's sort of like they get to know you on the tour. They're all sitting in the hotel lobby. That is just almost too real. Yes, that's the way people talk when they're about meeting one another on a long trip and they don't know anything about them. But it's so much more interesting to put them on the bus already, or lining up to go to the restroom at some pit stop on the tour or something like that. Just, that's a better way to meet them and see what they're really like, as opposed to, oh, we're all sitting around having a drink and we're literally introducing ourselves and saying why we are here. Which might work in theater a bit better, but that's a clunky scene. And the dinner scene that we talked about is similarly just, that's a set piece in this film. That's one of the big moments, and it's not terribly interesting. You're sort of just getting exposition about a character as when people are talking behind his back. So I did feel let down. There's not a lot of tension. There's not a lot of adventure or excitement. And when there is a moment of excitement, as you said, when they miss the train, it's kind of easily solved and they're right back with the group in no time.
The script, I am a bit surprised that the script is award nominated when it feels to me pretty first drafty, really. I feel like, I don't know, if someone presented me with this script, I would say, some nice ideas, now go back and make it work a bit harder. But it doesn't.
It's talky, right? I mean, I would think we would both agree that this is a really talky script. There are a lot of scenes, and as a result, there just aren't that many like purely visual scenes, and the ones that are very montage-like. I go back to that film where Dave leaves the restaurant afterwards and he's wandering around the streets a little bit, and he sees some of the Polish nightlife and their lights and all these just sort of lens flares showing up, and it gets a little bit cinematic for a moment, but we don't really learn much in that other than he's mad, he's got very mixed feelings, and he's already told you he has mixed feelings about Benji, and then he's just taking him onto the street in a lonely moment, and it's just... it's not very cinematic because it is so talky. I think that's what stood out for me.
Yep. I'm gonna harp on about opening and closing images again, and because I always do. And the opening and closing images of this film, you really are not even mirror images. They're pretty much identical. The same camera movements, the same reveal. We're listening to Chopin, I think, in an airport lounge. And the camera pans over a whole bunch of people, and then it settles on Benji, and it does the same thing at the beginning and the end of the movie. And when it came on to start with, I was thinking, okay, so this movie is about being alone in a crowd, because that's exactly what he is doing, and and it does kind of stick to that theme a little bit. But at the end of the movie, are we saying that Benji is still alone in a crowd? There hasn't really been an epiphany. There hasn't been any kind of progress. It's a little bit disappointing when I feel like the film is setting you up to believe that there will be a breakthrough or some progress, and then at the end it just bookends it by shrugging its shoulders and saying, back to that.
I think we as viewers are invited to put that progress there. So for me, what I did look at when I saw Benji sitting in the airport again, now he seemed a little more at ease with himself. So and that's optimistic, but I mean, that was my work. And that's that old theory of, if you put an image in front of a, juxtaposition, I've seen all this other stuff and now I see him smiling a little bit. I think, okay, things are good now. He's not going to attempt suicide again. But that's the viewer's work. I think anyone else could look at that film and say, there's absolutely no change. For some reason, this dude still likes to sit around in airports watching people, and he's not going home, and he didn't want to go visit Dave in the city. So, no change. Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest letdown, is that there really wasn't an aha moment. There was no eureka moment, and there's no major character change.
I think, it's the wrong ending. I think. I think there needed to be a proper ending rather than just it feels like a hiatus more than anything.
There's the callback to the slap, right? That Benji says, Dory, the grandmother, once slapped me and he loved it. And then in the airport, David tries to surprise him with a slap, and it does a little bit, but it doesn't, it's not like this slap that knocks some sort of realization into his head.
I think after David does that slap, Benji asks him, "Can I have one back now?" Doesn't he? And David says, "No, it's not
the way it works, right?"
Maybe my favorite thing about the whole film, maybe the title. Insofar as, I can understand how the film is being sold as, the real pain is Benji. Oh, he's such a pain to hang around with. Oh, what a pain he is. And I enjoyed sort of running that around my head while I was watching the film, because for all that you're set up that Benji is impulsive and difficult to live with. Actually, he's the one who gets to the airport first, and he's the one who's got everything prepared, and he's already bought David a breakfast, and he's kind of doesn't seem particularly impulsive. He seems reasonably thoughtful. Yeah. And as the film went on, I started to think, oh, maybe it's David who is the real pain, and it's not Benji at all. And then we go to the concentration camp, and it becomes more an exploration of this idea of inherited pain, of historical pain. I think it is trying to explore genuine pain, but I don't think it can quite complete the circle. It can't quite finish the thought, I think. There is kind of acknowledgement of horror and depth and death, but I think ultimately it feels like a little bit of a superficial take.
Yeah, and whose pain is it, I guess? I mean, whose pain is real might be the question that some might ask. And I think, obviously Benji is feeling real pain if he's willing to end his own life. And then yet, we're not sure if he still has that pain or not. Maybe a real pain lingers on. That's the thing. It is a good title. It has you thinking. But yeah, otherwise you're thinking, who's the real pain in the neck, right? Like Benji's supposed to be this irritating guy, and he's not. He's actually the more likable character. What did you think about the statue, the monument scene? That seemed a little goofy to me.
Yeah, I thought it did seem a bit goofy. It was cute insofar as you could see where it was going. Yeah, and and this is like a sort of a physical manifestation of Benji's charm. Yeah, he starts out. Everybody's taking these very sober, respectful photographs, and Benji is the one who wants to step over the line and take a funny photograph with the statue and sort of like own it, or at least really kind of participate. And then he persuades everybody else to join in apart from David. It's a cute scene. It's a little bit stagey. Goofy is a good word for it, actually. It is a bit goofy. It's one of the things that maybe sounded a lot of fun on paper. Yeah. When you end up with a crew and a bunch of actors and you got to film it, I wonder whether you end up feeling this isn't quite as funny and clever as I seemed when I wrote it down.
Precisely.
But it has a function. It's fine.
My gripe was that we're trying to illustrate Benji as this really dynamic character, charismatic and creative, and gets people doing fun things, and that just didn't seem like the best use of that, or the best way to communicate that to me.
But it's a very cheap way to communicate that.
Yes,
because it doesn't involve any extras or any kind of very complicated sets, or it's something you can film on the street pretty quickly. So it may be this is something to do with budget constraints as much as anything else. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. They should put that on the poster, shouldn't they?
A fine pain.
I tell you what, if you do travel all over Europe, even though Interpol have their fingers in many different pies, even in Europe, there is really only one Cliché Squad. Cliché Squad.
I didn't think their fingers were that long. Poland is safe from cliches.
Do you have to drop it? Is it a zloty? Is it a euro? I'm not entirely sure. Probably is a euro now. Maybe a euro.
Yeah, probably.
It probably is. We should drop a euro or 50 cents or something like that to found the Cliché Squad. I only wrote one cliché down.
Okay.
For this film, but it is a cliche that we've seen in quite a few films over the last couple of years while we've been doing the podcast, which is just the cliche that Europe is really nice. I feel like we've seen a lot of films where Europe it's clean, the public transport works, the food is great, the buildings are beautiful. I am waiting to watch a film where Europe seems a bit crummy and not very nice. That never ever happens.
Yeah.
But then maybe there is a reason why Europe never seems crummy in films. So that is my nominated cliche this week anyway. Europe being really nice.
I think well, that's true. It's a revelation to Americans. Americans could not imagine that there would be a nice place in the world. So I think for the audience here in the States, Europe is nice. For me, this is another one we've probably seen in films. I may have even mentioned this cliche before, but people getting hungry and immediately eating irresponsibly after smoking cannabis. It just seems to always happen. Even if you've just been in a restaurant and had a nice meal, if you smoke some cannabis, you have to be shown eating. And this is probably product placement. I think they were Doritos and Coca-Colas or something like that. And
something like that, wasn't it?
Again, a low-budget film that might make the difference. How can we get them eating the... Oh, if they smoke cannabis, they're automatically hungry.
Yeah, it is a cliche, isn't it? You know, I don't know whether they still sell them. There used to be these little sweets in Britain. They were chocolate on the outside, and they had a little toffee inside, and then a biscuit at the very centre. And these were called Munchies. I mean, I can only assume that the person who named Munchies came up with the name after smoking a lot of joints.
That sounds delicious.
Well, I'm feeling a bit hungry now. Maybe we should go and get some munchies.
Yes.
Let's have a break. I think short answer is a real pain. We're glad it exists.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're disappointed it's not slightly better.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great summary. Why did we just spend 25, 30 minutes talking about it when we could have just said that? We're glad it exists.
Let's go and get some munchies from the vending machine.
Oh, God.
We'll have a break, and then we will come back and we will talk about another visit to Europe, which has a number of things in common with this film. We will be talking about 1954's Journey to Italy.
The Two Reel Cinema Club is brought to you by Day Trippers. Day Trippers is the all-natural supplement for those of you who want to escape the daily grinds and real pains of life with brief journeys that are guaranteed to please. At Day Trippers, we cultivate and curate the highest quality organic mycelium and fungi to bring out the fun guy, fun girl, and fun one in all of us. Our patented chemical delivery system offers you safe microdose gummies suitable for days off and days on. Go wherever you choose by navigating the neural pathways of your own brain. Does it sound illegal? Is it illegal to smile, embrace joy, and explore the landscapes of the human brain? Then no. At Day Trippers, we can cater your next journey with appropriate soundtrack, set lists, wine pairings, and walking tour maps, all delivered to your smartphone or Bluetooth devices. Or you can choose from one of our ready-made trips, like Italy, the good one, not the one with no wine, poor service, loud people, and too much oil and garlic. San Francisco sober, kind of. Have you heard about this, James, that if you can be alcohol sober, it means you don't use other drugs, but you drink alcohol?
Oh.
Or you could be cannabis sober, which means you only use cannabis. San Francisco sober, I guess, just doesn't exist. Grocery store is another option, understimulated. There's bumpless bike ride, breathing not bad, but breathing good. There's music festival in your mind, 7 Seas bath time, and pretend meditation. And many more flavors and journeys and vision quests. All of our products are fully certified and legal when the ingredients are used in conjunction with one another. Any tampering with our products could be a violation of federal and state laws, except in Oregon. Use Day Trippers safely and as often as you please. Side effects of microdosing may occur, but could be viewed more positively as side day trips, and could also be pretty cool. Consult your doctor if you have that kind of relationship with your doctor, or if you think they're cool. Visit our website when we get one. But in the meantime, ask around, especially in and outside of music venues, festivals, museums, planetariums, and crowded pubs. Day Trippers. Go anywhere, anytime, but sleep in your own bed all the time.
Not only is that a great sponsor, but it's also definitely legal.
Exactly. We've had so many illegal sponsorships. It's nice to have a legit one. How legal is cannabis in the UK? Is it just...
I'm honestly not that sure. I think if judging by this very strong smell along the alleyway at the end of our road, completely legal. But I'm really not. I don't know whether it's kind of been declassified so that like owning a small amount is legal, and owning a large amount is like a minor misdemeanor or something like that. But I honestly don't know. I should know, shouldn't I? I don't know. In fact, you know what? I might look it up actually.
Yeah. But for us, it's state by state. So I think there may be 25 or 30 states where it's fully legal for recreational use.
That's interesting. Okay, so in 2004, the UK made cannabis a Class C drug with less severe penalties, but it was moved back to Class B in 2009.
Wow.
Medical use of cannabis was legalised in 2018.
Wow, that's late.
Despite the fact that cannabis is still illegal in the UK with limited availability for medical use, as of 2016, the UK was the world's largest exporter of legal cannabis.
So you're sending it all away.
Yeah.
Probably good. That's probably good practice. Bring in the money.
Yes. Turn drugs into money.
And we are back from both the sweets vending machines and the cannabis vending machines. Ooh.
Funny how they form like a kind of vicious circle, isn't it?
Oh my God, it's a perfect pairing, just like these two films. We also made a journey to Italy.
We did.
With the help of our friends at Day Trippers. Why did we do that, James? Can you tell me?
Do you have any other questions for me, Counsel?
Good question. Right, so I chose this one. So we wanted to watch A Real Pain, and originally we were going to pair it with Everything Is Illuminated.
That's right. Oh, that's right.
2005 film directed by Liv Schreiber.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it, and you have seen it, and you said it's not very good.
Lukewarm, but in hindsight, there's the Liv Schreiber actor first, or among his first directing features, and same for Jesse Eisenberg. So they probably would have paired well, but...
Yeah, they probably would. But instead, I feel like it's good to choose a bona fide classic for the second film. And this is a bona fide classic. Suppose I think Sight and Sound put it in like the top 50 or top 100 films of all time. Oh, wow. I personally love this film.
Oh, okay.
I love Roberto Rossellini. It's exciting to have an excuse to see one of his films on the pod, and I realised vaguely that Journey to Italy is about two people who are on a journey to a European country who kind of don't get on, but then sort of reconcile through the events of the story. Yeah. I don't think I realised at the time how many elements they have in common. These two are really absolutely chock full of parallels. This was a much cleverer pairing than I realised. I wish I could thank my subconscious, but no, it's just dumb luck basically that they turn out to be such a good pairing. But yes, these two films belong together. I find it difficult to imagine that Jesse Eisenberg had not seen Journey to Italy fairly recently when he was writing A Real Pain, because they have a lot of little points in common.
Probably, yeah. I was walking home today and thinking, are these two sides of the same coin, or a coin with two of the same sides?
Yeah, one of those coins with two heads that I always use when trying to decide who's going to kick off. Yes. So I didn't realize this is Rossellini's third film with his wife Ingrid Bergman at the time, and I think they split up shortly after making this film. So they had made Stromboli and then Europe 51 together before this.
Yeah.
And the other thing I didn't realise is that there's a whole bunch of different versions of this film. There is a 70-minute version, an 80-minute version. Yeah. I think the Italian version is 110 minutes long.
Whoa.
So there's a bunch of different versions. I watched the 80-minute version, did you?
I think it was about that. Yeah, just under an hour and a half, maybe almost 85 and 87 minutes or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that I would be tempted to go back and see a longer version, because for me there's some missing stuff, I think, but it's interesting. There's one that's as short as 70 minutes and one that's 40 minutes longer. Is the Italian version? Wow, that's a lot to cut out.
Later on I might tell you which is the scene that is most often cut, apparently.
Was it in the version that you watched?
Yes, I think that the most commonly cut scene was in the version that I watched.
So we probably watched the same version, I think. Mine was a 2012 Janus restoration. It was a bit too squeaky clean, I thought. It was just it's been cleaned up too much. It looked very good.
I watched a 2006 BFI DVD, which had that wonderful thing that we miss so deeply, which is a DVD commentary. The film historian does a little commentary on it. So I watched the film twice, once with the real soundtrack and once with the commentary, which is a joy.
Wow.
Well, do you want to tell us what the story of Journey to Italy is, and then we can wax lyrical at our leisure?
That's a pretty good idea, but that's basically what we do every week. So it's not like we're breaking new ground or anything there. I'm doing something radical here. It was directed by Roberto Rossellini. And then I got a little confused because I had to go back and look at the credits because I saw that it was directed by Renzo Rossellini, but it was a longer credit. It said music composed and then on the lower line, directed by Renzo Rossellini. So I was confused. I'm assuming either Renzo Rossellini is a relative or some pseudonym for Roberto Rossellini.
It's Roberto's brother.
Is it? There you go.
It's his brother.
Little cronyism there in the film industry in Italy in the 50s. 1954. Screenplays by Roberto Rossellini with Vitaliano Brancati, based on Duo, which I guess is either a novelette or a short story by Colette, which I'm sure you have read this week.
I'm going to disappoint you this week. I did not read the book this week. How disappointing. I've let you down.
I thought for sure you would have read it in the original French and had much to tell us about it. The two big actors are Ingrid Bergman as Catherine Joyce and George Sanders as Alex Joyce. And here we go. Alex and Catherine are rushing down a road in a right-hand drive sedan in the Italian countryside. So what does that mean? Does that mean that they've probably taken their car from England into Italy?
Yeah, apparently it's a Bentley. It's a British Bentley they're driving.
Catherine's driving. Alex takes the wheel because he is afraid he'll fall asleep if he doesn't, that was disturbing to me. I thought, okay,
that's the wrong way round, isn't it?
Yeah, you're going to fall asleep while driving, and this film is going to go in a very different direction. He immediately complains about Italian drivers in the first of many complaints about Italy and its people. They're noisy, they're boring. The Italians, that is. But I thought maybe Alex and Catherine were a little bit boring, actually. Kind of noisy. But there's a lot of criticizing others for what you fault in yourself. I thought that was a theme that was like stated almost right there, and it sort of lingers throughout the film. After a few minutes of sort of lengthy exposition, we find that these two people are stuck in a car, they're stuck in a marriage. We have learned that they've inherited an Italian villa, which for some reason they want to sell. I thought that was
it's insane. Why?
Yeah.
No.
But at the same time, it seems like they hadn't been there before. They hadn't seen it. But their marriage is also deeply in trouble because they claim, although they've been married 8 years, not only have they never been alone with one another, they don't really know each other at all. And then they stopped for cows. And that means things are going to slow down. They check into a hotel. They have dinner with friends that are in town. They end up in Napoli, I guess, Naples. And when Catherine sees Alex talking with a woman, she assumes that Alex is interested in this other woman. So there's some jealousy starts to percolate a little bit. After showering Alex and Catherine with his own exposition, an acquaintance shows them the villa that they have inherited, and we see literally every door open and close. This is like a full-on tour by an estate agent of this palace, and it's awesome. The film could probably end right there with them happily enduring one another's presence in basically the coolest house on the planet. They've got beautiful views of the island. Is it Capri, the island? They've got the ocean. You can see Vesuvius.
They've
got this fantastic terrace. But they hate Italy. They complain about the food. It's all oil and garlic. They can't seem to mime to a maid that they want more wine, so there's communication issues. So then you wonder, will they learn to love those unpleasant Italians and their lack of culture? Will they change their hearts and minds and lounge in Italian sun on their terrace with its expansive views of mountains, volcanoes, islands, and the ocean? Will they argue pointlessly, or loosen up and enjoy the ride, or will they divorce, fall back in love with one another, or at least fall in love with the new status at a sweet and enormous villa where they can avoid each other to their heart's contents? They've been set up for a beautiful life in this film, and then as we talk on, we'll see there's some trouble brewing, huh?
Some people never realize when they are lucky, do they? Interesting, that scene fairly early on where Alex goes down to demand more wine from the housekeeper, who then can't speak any English. He speaks no Italian. That is the scene which is most commonly cut, apparently.
Oh, my
distributors
God.
hate that scene.
With good reason.
Because I think kind of people say, well, it doesn't do anything, doesn't go anywhere. You just cut it out. Get rid of that.
It's also kind of unbelievable. All you have to do is point to yourself and then act a little bit drunk, and then you point to the bottle, and then the wine comes. I mean, there are not many things that he would be asking her for. So it's an unbelievable scene. It doesn't do them favors as characters. I didn't really like them so much as characters because there was a lot of complaining, but also you're complaining about Italy and this villa, and you think these guys are spoiled and they're kind of clueless. So it makes it hard to invest too much in them as characters, I think.
This film sometimes is criticised for being very, very light on plot.
Yeah.
And it is a little bit light on plot. It's not plotless, and things do happen.
Yeah.
Probably at least as much happens as does happen in A Real Pain.
Yeah.
But I think this film, it just demonstrates such a deep understanding of character. This is a film all about the characters, and the film really explores the inner life as well as it can of these characters. The characters are contradictory and sophisticated and believable, and real. I think great characters, all the more impressive because this film broadly did not have a script, although supposedly it was written by Rossellini and Brancati, but actually. I think Rossellini was just sort of writing scenes just before they would shoot.
Yeah.
He would get the actors to improvise. He would change his mind halfway through the scene and try something different. And I think his intention, he was coming from neorealism. His intention was to get George Saunders and Ingrid Bergman to just be themselves.
Yeah.
That I think was his goal. He was a director who didn't want actors. He wanted people to reveal the essential essence of their own souls.
Yeah.
And I think that may be one of the reasons why I find this film, actually quite moving and involving. I wrote some little notes on my paper here, and the top one I've written is just 5 words: "This is a beautiful film." And I really think it is. I think, so I've seen this at least 3 times, maybe 4 times, and I think every time I see it, it starts off and you think, "Oh, it's a bit flat, isn't it? Or it's a bit stagey, isn't it?"
Yeah.
And gradually, every time, I'm utterly seduced and entranced. I think it's just a beautiful film.
Yeah, it's easy on the eyes for sure, and I think that's when we start talking about the 2 films, this a big difference between the 2 films. Easy to watch. I got to say, it was very easy to watch, and it's beautiful. And it's beautiful in that 1950s Italian film style. So it's the black and white just does it. I think wonders too. And I think I think her character is pretty well explored through some of her little jaunts to museums and things. And it seems like Rossellini wants to tell you something in each of these little trips to the museums. And one thing he wants to tell you is that the Italians are grouchy old men who don't really want to do their jobs. Because every museum guide she has is just unfriendly, unhelpful, and just sort of muttering his way through tours with them. And I think some of it might be the fact that we're sort of hearing some Italian, and then or like this broken English version of what an Italian guy would say. But on the first tour, he's really taking her and showing her in quite detail a lot of naked men in sculptures. And you think that, okay, there's some sort of sexual exploration that she needs to go through in order to be happy in her marriage. Because the marriage is largely unhappy. It's very funny that they don't know each other after 8 years, or that they haven't been alone very much until this trip. There's another trip where she starts seeing lonely women on the streets of Napoli. She's just focused on, and I thought her character was really developed in this way, that she's focusing on what she's missing in life or something like that, or how she feels in life by what she sees on the streets. Later,
all these street shots, they're all it's basically documentary film.
Yeah, I think so. It's
just the real streets of Naples.
And some of them are really crowded street shots. So, I mean, they're just sort of stealing scenes here and there. Lots of women with babies later on because she and Alex don't have a child. You've got this classic scene of there's a funeral parade going through just when their relationship seems like it's dead. We see a hearse going through a busy street with mourners behind it. There's a skeleton museum or a repository, or I think I had to write the pronunciation down. It's an ossuary. Is that what it is?
Oh, good.
Ossuary. Where you've got all these bones.
I just wrote catacomb, something like that, I think. But yes.
Yeah. So it's like I think her psychology is explored pretty well through these shots of what she sees when she goes out in Naples in the area. And Alex doesn't really do much. He doesn't do these cultural things. So he's a little harder nut to crack, but he seems just much about status, and he's obviously chasing a young woman for a part of the film.
He's chasing, as we would have said back in the 1970s, anything in a skirt, basically, isn't he?
Yes.
So he's kind of flirting with this woman at the restaurant, and then later on there's like another woman on Capri where he goes to stay, who's she's injured or whatever, and she's walking around with a cane.
We see her earlier.
His first thought is,
hey,
injured woman, check it out. So he's kind of chasing her down.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of a great scene where he's been sort of flirting with her, obviously, for on the night, and he's flirting with her again the following day, and then she makes this comment. She says, "My husband's coming now," doesn't she?
Yes, and
it reminds me of Spencer Brown, a comedian, friend of the pod, used to do some material about this. He said he finds himself, you go out and you end up talking to a girl all night and you're getting on really well, and it gets to the very end of the evening, and then she mentions her boyfriend. Yeah. And he was saying it's like going for a job interview, and the interview goes really, really well, and then at the end of 2 hours after you've been talking and selling yourself so well, the people doing the interview, they turn to you and they say, well, you've done great in the interview, but I'm afraid there's no job.
Yeah. That is about it.
So yes, and then he returns kind of his tail between his legs, or something between his legs anyway, and kind of comes back to the mainland, and then he goes out and he's asking the bartender, are there any good nightclubs around here?
Yeah.
And then he goes out and he picks up a sex worker from the street. I mean, he's insatiable, isn't he?
Yeah.
Determined.
It's very, very well dressed and very polite sex worker, by the way. It was
who incidentally is played by an actor who was the wife of the screenwriter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe for the 50s that's believable as a sex worker, but 70 years, is it 70 years later, something like that?
Yeah.
Didn't seem that accurate a portrayal, but I love when he comes back that night too. He comes back and they've been apart for 3 or 4 days. So I mean, we have all these scenes where they're each doing their own thing, and they get back together. And for me, the anger just emerges quite suddenly. It didn't feel very realistic to me that they start fighting about just any old thing, and it seems to happen a lot. They're quick to argue with one another.
I think the fact that it appears unrealistic to you, I think, just demonstrates how harmonious your marriage is.
We have some blow-ups for sure, but usually I know I've done something wrong. It's my fault, and then we argue, and it's okay after that. But these guys, it's just these conflicts just emerged from nowhere for me. I think it was really hard for me to see that. It wasn't you know that there's something simmering, but the I guess the inciting incidents were so trivial in many cases, but. He comes back that night and he gargles with mouthwash. I loved this scene. And then he has a cigarette, which I thought was kind of funny. It's like, it's the old school way of getting a menthol cigarette is you do some mouthwash first and then you eat a cigarette. DIY all the way. But I felt like they needed therapy because there was no reason. And then, he eventually goes back to her after they've argued and says, could you send someone to wake me up at 11 o'clock in the morning? They have a really odd marriage. And I think it was almost as if I couldn't even believe they were married. Like, why were they married in the first place if they really did not get along at any moment? So it was a little, I think that was a little forced. And I think, the film is more about them being apart. And you sort of get all the information when they're apart. The only thing you get when they're together is that they're just not happy. And they shouldn't be together. Which makes the ending quite ironic, I think. Donkey alert.
Yes.
There's a donkey on the streets when she's visiting the ossuary. And then... it's on the same day as a trip to Pompeii. I mean, as soon as I saw the donkey in Pompeii, I said, this is a TRCC wheelhouse moment. This is where we know what we're doing. We know what we're doing.
This is our wheelhouse.
And there was I've got a couple metaphor alerts. One was that at Pompeii, they witnessed these excavators filling 2 hollow bodies in the lava field. Yeah. And then one of the workers announces, perhaps a husband and wife dying together. And I thought, oh boy. And then Catherine sort of has the right reaction. It's a little overdone, but she cries. She's you think she's about to go off and vomit somewhere. She never leaves cultural sites, right? She loves this kind of stuff, but suddenly she wants to flee like the best site in the world. And I thought that was pretty good. And then also you get this other metaphor, I think, like the past is perfectly preserved at Pompeii, and yet she's trying to sort of leave the past behind. And then, the past is always there. There are a couple of nice little moments. Finally, they get stuck in this traffic jam. There's some sort of ceremony, this festive parade. Alex says, you've never understood me. You never even tried. And then she gets sort of swallowed by those unruly, noisy, boring, lazy Italians, right? Did you see that? And Alex jumps in and saves her, and then they go on to this moment about why do we torture one another? I love you, and then she says, she wants him to say I love you too, and he says, well, you just have to say it so that I can hear it. And he says I love you, and then the film is over. It sort of ends. The film closes, and this is definitely not a bookend moment. We look at the version I saw. You're sort of looking at these security officers through throngs of other people. And that's where it ended. So it's a peculiar ending, and
it is. It's like it pans away to like the street scene again, doesn't it?
And for me, I just didn't feel like they deserved that ending. Like all of a sudden they're going to stay together. I mean, I guess he sort of exhausted some of his possibilities by trying to flirt with other women, and she saw lots of culture and all that, but she's not. There is one scene where he gets jealous because she's talking to some men at a party too, right?
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel like it deserved that ending, or it didn't merit that ending. It didn't really work hard enough to work on their relationship, I guess, to get them to the place where they realized, we do love each other. Because from the very beginning, we're told, this marriage is in trouble, and then we see how it's in trouble, and then all of a sudden, just one moment when he saves her in a crowd is enough to make them fall back in love again. So I couldn't buy it.
This is 1950s marriage counselling, I think, isn't it? Yes. I mean, I suppose it's supposed to be miraculous, their reconciliation, because it is sort of in the shadow of this effigy of the Virgin Mary or something like that, isn't it? It's a broadly religious festival or spectacle or parade that they interrupt.
Yeah.
And I do like the way that the film definitely ends very differently to the way that it begins, because when its opening image is racing along a highway at top speed, and the camera is jiggling all over the place, and it's all kind of everything moving very, very fast, and they're going past different junctions, and it's choice left or right, and they're kind of spelling out that we're traveling headlong into the future and we've got a decision to make. Whereas at the end, they're in this car, and the car just goes slower and slower and slower and slower until it can't go any further at all. And so it's the exact opposite of the opening of the film.
Yeah, you're stuck
they are slowed down to a pace of 0.
Yeah.
And it's only then that the miracle is kind of allowed to occur. I agree. It's a funny ending insofar as they reconcile for all of 7 seconds, and then we cut to the credits. So, but I do quite like that old notion of you tell the story you want to tell, and then you get out. Yeah. We're not hanging around. This film. So I know I am biased, and I've already explained that I think this is a beautiful film, and I find it moving, and it touches me, but it's absolutely packed with richness and depth and ideas, isn't it? It's all about it's like how the past is under our feet constantly, isn't it? Yeah. It's the juxtaposition of the past and the present. Yep. How the dead impinge on the living. Mm-hmm. Even things like, and I didn't realize this until recently, I think the reason they are called Catherine and Alex Joyce is they're named after James Joyce and his story The Dead from Dubliners, I think, in which I think the wife reflects on her previous lover, who was a poet who died prematurely.
Yes.
And then Catherine, Ingrid Bergman's character in this movie, is doing exactly the same thing. She's kind of reflecting on this poet that she once knew, and he died, and she remembers his poems, and she kind of feels wistful about it in a way that Alex, absolutely cannot stand, and this drives a wedge between them. And it's the notion that the uncle that they have inherited the house from is called Homer. I mean, he is like the author of ancient epics. Mm-hmm. It's all about history touching the present.
It's to me, it's interesting where Rossellini invests his time in this film, because he shows you everything, like pulling up to a curb, 2 car doors opening, people walking to the entrance, someone opening the door for them, they walk in. He invests a lot of time in there, and he sets up there's this one restaurant scene. It's the one where Alex sees Catherine talking and maybe flirting to someone, where it takes a long time to get to that restaurant or that party. I think it's a party. And then they're gone. I mean, we've spent a lot of time going there and a lot of effort going there, and then we see one thing, and then the scene is over, and they really don't. He doesn't confront her about that right away. It comes up later, I believe. Whereas, I think he could invest more time in some of these arguments. I hate to make it talkier, but I think we need to know a little bit more about really what rubs one another wrong in their relationship, and we don't get a lot of that. So I think, and there's so much time invested in their lives apart that I think the times when they're together just don't ring true to me. And it's sort of just where he's putting the writing. Something else that I thought of though was I couldn't tell if would the escalations of anger from virtually nowhere translate more in Italian. I was wondering, he's writing this thing in Italian, presumably, right? So it's Italian writers making a story and a drama for Northern European characters and actors. And it's sort of written with all these Italian sensibilities, for Italian sensibilities. I just wonder if the film would come off different if it had been an Italian film with Italian characters in the Italian language. I think it might play a little differently. So all those scenes where they do erupt into anger, I mean, culturally, this is a massive stereotype, but maybe from his experience, that's more realistic than it was from my experience. So I was trying to look at it as an Italian film, and, it is an Italian film, but it doesn't feel like it's about Italy in pictures, but I think in sensibilities and in the story of the two characters, it's not about Italy somehow. It's about their marriage, right? But it's an Italian view of marriage. Yeah.
I think kind of people argue that there is like a third major character in the film, which is Naples itself.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
And he's very much really wants to explore Naples and show you Naples. And you get a lot of documentary footage of not just people on the street, but I think the scene where they go to the excavation and they see, not only do we see a lot of Pompeii, but I think that is like a real excavation, those plaster casts that emerge of the man and the woman. So there is a documentary element of that. And there's kind of something which sort of slightly passes me by until I read about it, which is the film was shot in early 1953, so only 8 years after the end of the Second World War.
Yeah.
And so, Italy was still reeling from the effect of the war. I think, this is one of the things which is reflected in the scene where he picks up the woman who is the sex worker on the street. I think that a lot of Italians were actually surviving largely through this underground economy at the time because the country was yet to get back on its feet. Yeah. So this is a tricky, challenging time for Italy. Yeah. I'm guessing to have some wealthy British tourists turn up was a bit of a boon for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because for me this is oddly at one and the same time it's sort of this advertisement for the Greater Neapolitan Tourist Board and a running complaint and condemnation of all negative things Italian and Italians. The things that they say about the workers there and the people there and the country and the food is crazy, but at the same time you're seeing these awesome images of this beautiful country and this fantastic villa. You think, I want to move there, but maybe I don't want to move there.
I don't think anybody walks out of this film thinking, well, I'm definitely not going to Italy. It looks terrible.
Exactly.
Yes, I don't know. You cannot disguise it, can you? It's kind of beautiful. I do love the way that Vesuvius keeps cropping up.
Yeah.
You see it again and again and again. There's that kind of lovely, sort of mysterious scene where she goes to the I don't know if it's like the sort of ash pits or something like that, but she sees like the mini Vesuvius, and there's this kind of volcanic activity, and the guide, one of these many kind of slightly grumpy, stagey guides that she takes. So I'm guessing probably real tour guides, weren't they?
Yeah,
scooped up and stuck in the film. But he takes a drag on a cigarette and then blows the smoke over the kind of the tar pit, and he talks about the mystery of ionization, something like that. And there's this beautiful kind of little symbol that something that happens in one place affects everything around you, in the same way that all the world that is around you affects what's happening in your psyche. It's just full of these poetic, lovely images. It feels like it comes to him effortlessly. There's just so much beautiful material in the film,
and they reflect the inner torment of the characters. I suppose there's this, Vesuvius is just going to erupt at any moment, or these ash pits or lava pits are going to just explode at any moment. So you feel like, okay, this is the simmering of their relationship as well.
My final little comment that I wrote in my notes here. I'm so pleased with this. I'm going to read it out, which is. The film itself is like the plaster cast. It is a moment frozen in time, only revealed after the passing years. I think that final metaphor of that you pour something into this hole and something is revealed. It feels like the film is the sort of the same thing. There's something both. It is kind of documentary, and it is recalling a specific moment in a specific place, but it is also universal and eternal at the same time.
Yeah.
It's just a very moving bit of work. I think it's great.
Then what do we say?
Well, after prostrating myself in front of Rossellini for 20 minutes, I'm guessing we're going to have to draw some lines between this film and A Real Pain, aren't we? We'll play the jingle. Oh no! Wait a second. But before we do that, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. We need to play Who Am I?
Yes, we do. We do. I'm kind of excited about it.
Have I written in my notes? But I have written in my notes. How lucky that is. Well, come on. We're having a lovely time in Italy.
Yeah.
We've eaten some oily food.
Yeah.
We've inhaled an awful lot of sulfur. Now let's play my favourite game. Who am I? Who am I?
Do we have to be... We don't have to be people, do we? Here's what I want to be. I want to be that villa in Journey to Italy, which also is kind of known very often as Voyage to Italy. Every time, for the last couple of weeks, I've been putting in to stream or to learn about Voyage to Italy, and Journey to Italy automatically comes up, and vice versa. It's really quite crazy. Because it's called Viaggio, right? Viaggio Italiano.
Yeah, so it feels like it should be Voyage.
Yeah. I love the villa. I would just love to be the villa, because you'd get to be there all the time. Opening your doors, and then opening them again, and opening your windows and your doors again and again. But just to spite you, I've always wanted to be James. So I'm James in A Real Pain. I kind of connected to that guy. Yeah. He seemed to be a struggler. Being the English bloke in Poland, taking these guys on a tour in the English language, and he gets some criticism from Benji and the others about talking too much, and geez, I just feel like I've been that guy, and I just loved the way that James was open to it. At the end, he's actually thanking Benji for telling him to talk less, and I just thought he was a good bloke at heart. It didn't make sense, really, I agree with you there, but... And he wasn't really a great character, but that's the one I kind of related to the most in the two films, or the villa. It's not. Both of these seem like sensible lifestyle choices, if you ask me. Yeah. Either you get to enjoy the sunshine and look at Capri, or you get to trot around Poland and have a little bit of a chit chat and eat in restaurants. Both of those sound like very sensible ideas. Out of all the people that I've seen this week, I've been reminded that there is like a side of myself which I can sometimes kind of switch on when I'm feeling
confident, which is like the kind of, there's a wise guy like hiding inside me who's like kind of an ass, who is kind of cheeky and outspoken and iconoclastic and, you know, and sometimes a bit spontaneous and probably pretty infuriating. And, you know, sometimes it is fun to be that kind of, that wise guy, you know, and liberating. But in my experience over my life, I have gradually figured out that although it's fun, it rarely leads to anything very good.
Yeah.
So these days I try to keep that guy in check. Sometimes he emerges on the podcast, but I try to keep him in check in real world. But basically, so I watched Benji and I thought, yeah, man, you know, Benji in A Real Pain, there are some of the things that he does I can see in that guy in the mirror.
Yeah.
So I think probably I am a bit like that, and I am not proud.
He's a good guy, though. Think of how many hugs he had towards the end of that film.
He's broadly a good guy, but probably infuriating to hang out with for more than a few days.
He's the emotional center of that film, though, for sure. And I think that does make it. I guess you can't call him a protagonist, and that's why he's considered a supporting actor. But for me, he is the protagonist ultimately in that film. I think.
I agree.
David just sort of witnessing and recording him more than he's being a cousin to him or leading that film.
Yeah, he's just How could you give the Oscar to the straight guy when it's the funny guy that we come out remembering? Yeah. Okay, as promised, then we've revealed a little bit too much of ourselves in our Who Am I's. So let's sweep that back under the rug, and we will see whether we can draw these two films with a great deal in common together. So I've written here in my notes, two travellers who love each other but find each other infuriating. Taking a trip into unfamiliar territory together.
Yeah.
This change in their environment catalyzes their relationship. Tick. They are transformed by close encounters with the spectre of death. They are moved by encounters with art. I mean, there's just a lot of common ground between these two films.
I think agreed. Yeah. I'm glad you talked about the common ground thing. I think that was the one I was trying to connect to. For me, there's an interesting focus on the importance of a house or a place as either past or future. Like both of these films ultimately go to a house as sort of it's like the journey is supposed to end there somehow. And it's unclear whether Catherine and Alex are going to end up at that beautiful villa or they're going to foolishly sell it and then go back to where I guess they were coming from England or something like that. I don't really get the backstory too well. If they lived in London or somewhere. Yeah, so I'm not even sure.
Surely it must be London, I would guess.
And it's just this idea, can you get happiness by changing place or do you have to change person or neither? I think they're both films work there. There's not a lot of character change, I don't think, in either film. And I think that's an interesting connection. I think A Real Pain, I liked the dialogue and believed the dialogue more in A Real Pain, but I thought it didn't have images to save it as a piece of cinema. Whereas the Journey to Italy has tons of images to save it. It's a beautiful film. That's why we remember it, I think. But it's kind of overly expository. It does feel sort of stagey at times. And the dialogue was either very clear exposition of like mundane things or intensely obvious personal stuff that was equally unrealistic. Like people don't really tell their emotions that cleanly or that openly. So the dialogue and image balance is sort of like opposite in the two films, I would say. I also think kind of awkward endings and maybe somewhat undeserved. They both end sort of on acceptance of some sort. Benji seems to be reconciled to sitting in airports and seems to enjoy that, and I think it's more that he's reconciled to himself. It's a self that he's no longer going to harm, I guess. And he does see things that I think that one scene with Dave on the rooftop tells him he should be happy with who he is and he should accept himself. And then Catherine and Alex, oddly, I'm not sure if they're reconciled to an unfulfilling marriage. And And it might be just because they know that they're going to be in that villa together forever, which I could be unhappily married in a place like that. So I think those are my takes on it. They are, as I said, I don't know if it makes any difference where the coin comes or where the two sides come and all that stuff. They mirror each other quite well, and they seem very similar on some levels, but they have some really strong differences that I think make them the two sides of the same coin, or the two coins of different sides. I don't know what it is. Yeah.
I wrote down mine. I think both these films they're trying to explore this notion of travel as therapy, isn't it? Somehow, like going to a new place. It's like that thing people say: wherever you go, there you are.
Yes.
Isn't it? But in this case, it's kind of refuting that. Both of these are saying if you take the person out of the place, put them in somewhere new, and you get a new perspective. It's like if you want to see somebody more clearly, move the light. And that's kind of what's happening in both of these films, isn't it? You're going to a new place, and now suddenly you either see things more clearly, or you just see something you didn't see before. Travel broadens the mind, isn't it?
Yes.
It's that's I guess what they're trying to say. And also they are both saying, I think both of them are aware that death is all around us, isn't it? That we live among and on top of the past. Whether we see it or not, it's you can't understand the world unless you understand how it got to be like this. Yeah. And these films are both they're about kind of acknowledging and incorporating the past. Yeah. And kind of to bringing the past to the present, something like that. I'm sure there's a more articulate, intelligent way to say that, but I think that's what both of these films are sort of exploring. Yeah, to live life, you need to acknowledge death. You need to know death. I mean, we see cemeteries, we see concentration camps in these films, we see an entire city wiped out by a volcano. So there's death all around. It's a good point. Agreed. Yeah. It's a shame if you see both of these films and the main image you come away from them is a big pile of ash, but that is kind of one of the big overriding images of both of them. Part of it, yeah. I think there's a big irony in the sense that it does suggest, both films I think suggest that if you go somewhere else, you're going to see things differently, but you don't necessarily change, right? The characters don't change a whole lot in either film, so their circumstances have changed, their locations have changed, but I think the piece that will probably make them happier has been exposed maybe by being in a different place, but you still have to do that personal work. I don't think there's that much change that they've done without or just simply by moving to another place or going on a certain trip. Right. Yep. Well, A Real Pain. It's going to be interesting to see whether it scoops up awards or not. Interesting to see what people feel it deserves. Yeah. But I think you could do worse than go out and see A Real Pain at the theatres. Yeah, I saw it unbelievably in just perfect conditions. I was the only person in the theater, and I think that's maybe happened once before. I saw a matinee show right after school, and I kept looking around to see, is anyone else going to be here? Are they actually going to show this movie for me? One person, and they did. So it made it easy to jot notes and get up and run around during the film and all that, but throw popcorn everywhere and know that they would know that I was the one who did that. But I saw it, and it was just wonderful because it was like being in a big living room all by yourself, so I could misbehave and just put my feet up and all that. And so I saw it in the ideal circumstances, but I wish it were a little bit better. I'd be surprised if it gets an award for best screenplay, because it's not a screenplay that really involves a lot of imagery, not a lot of character change. It's very talky, so who knows? Kieran Culkin might get a supporting actor. I mean, he does the role very easily, but it just seems pretty easy for him. It just seems like it's a part written for him. In my mind, you went to see that film and you took all your clothes off, and Oh, I know. If I'd known for sure no one was going to walk in, maybe. That'd be awesome. And to the camera, I guess the night cameras, they'd probably pick that up, though, if you're naked watching that film. Bucket list. bucket list.
You've just added something to my bucket list. That's not a good friendship thing.
Now I feel like I am going to be legally responsible when you get arrested. We have just got time to talk about what else has been playing at this theatre.
I'll tell you about my home theater.
Yep. Tell me.
First of all, we've got a nice, it's kind of a smartish TV, maybe too smart. I call it like a smart-ass TV. We got the new TV. I've got the Bose smart speaker.
Oh, nice.
Covering the sound side of it. So it's just a perfect arrangement. And we have started the Netflix series 100 Years of Solitude.
Oh.
It's basically my favorite book of all time. And I've always worried that someone was going to destroy this book.
Interesting. This is also my favorite book of all time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people,
I am worried that someone is going to destroy the book.
Okay.
So you are a braver man than me.
Oh, no. So I had read about this in the newspaper, or it might have been even a New York Times. It was like, it was a New York Times Best 50 Films or Television.
What does that say about the New York Times? That you either read about it in the newspaper or the New York Times? How's that?
It's kind of the only newspaper that's left, but... Sometimes, I get a local newspaper that grabs a lot of its articles from the New York Times or other papers. So, yeah.
There's a word for that, isn't there?
Plagiarism? Something like that? Copyright infringement? Anyway, it's a Colombian production, and I think that makes all the difference in the world. Oh. And, because I'm a screenwriter, I think in film, and I thought, you can't do this in a 2-hour film, and you don't want to make a 3-hour film. But like the episodic, the series style and limited series is the way to go. So there are 8 episodes out now, and I think it's probably the first half of the book, and then I think there's another set of 8 episodes coming out soon. And it's been fantastic. It's such a relief to see it really well done. If this had been done by Americans, I think it would have been a mess. So it's really, really well done. I would recommend it to everyone. Just get started on it and enjoy, because it's they're about an hour each. So we probably seen 6 of the 8, maybe 7. We've got a couple to go. But then, the nice thing is there are another 8 episodes coming up. So, whew.
Wow, so they have filmed the unfilmable.
They have, and they've done an amazing, amazing job.
Wow,
yeah.
Gosh. He's not alive anymore, is he?
He died. Boy. Might have been almost 10 years ago. I think it was 2014.
Gosh, okay.
2015, maybe, somewhere in there, yeah.
Well, more power to them.
Yeah.
We've seen something considerably less highbrow this week. I got given, Rachel gave me a Curzon membership last year, and it was just coming to the end of the membership, and I still had one token left to use up.
Yeah.
So we rented a film from the Curzon online film service. So we watched Kensuke's Kingdom, which is a 2003 animated film based on a Michael Morpurgo book, which we read as a family probably about 4 or 5 years ago and really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And now there's an animated version. So we sat and watched that. The book is a pretty cute sort of well-written children's story about a boy who gets shipwrecked on this island where there's a reclusive Japanese man lives alone. And the film is pretty faithful to the book, but doesn't particularly go much further. Yeah. So I came away thinking it was a fairly no frills, did what it says on the tin, animated adaptation. So it was fine. I wish it was better than fine. I think the book is pretty good, and it's tough to live up to filming a very good book.
Yeah.
Goodness knows what will happen if someone tries to make an adaptation of my favorite book of all time. I hope that never happens.
Well, it has happened.
Oh no!
And it's one of the rare ones. Oh my God! Embrace this. This is a moment. This is a moment for literature and for cinema. So I think it's on Netflix here.
Right. Okay.
So
how can something be good and it's originally gone to Netflix?
I don't know. Again, I don't know if Netflix was involved in the production. I could do a little research, but I don't want to. I just want to watch the.
Want to watch it. Just enjoy.
I suspect they picked it up. Maybe it was made for Colombian television, but I mean, when you make something that's 8 hours of episodes. It's you're not putting it in the theater, so someone was doing it for TV or streaming. So, so good. I think you'll be happy. I was pleasantly surprised, and the happiness washes over you within the first 5 minutes. Like that first episode, I was just ruining the moment. It was, oh no, it's going to be bad right away, and then I'm going to watch all of it and be unhappy forever, the rest of my life. And it's quite the opposite. 5 minutes in, you're just like, yes, they did it. They did it. They did the impossible. Yeah.
Okay, I might reread the book before I watch it, though.
And I'm hearing from two real people from coast to coast, from Brunswick, Maine, all the way to Albany, California, that they like it. The people like it. So yeah, I'm not the only one. People are very happy about it. America says yes. Yes.
On Instagram, we are at Two Real Cinema Club. I'm not sure how long we're going to stay on Instagram. Ooh. Maybe by the time we record the next pod, we'll move to Blue Sky. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll maybe still have to talk about that off mic.
Yeah.
You could read the blog at tworealcinemaclub.com. Comment on our YouTube channel. Some people have commented recently and said nice things. And said some quite rude things. We like to read all your comments. Or you can email us at tworealcinemaclub@gmail.com. Next time we're going to be at the popcorn counter, but a week or so after that, we're going to be watching the current hot ticket. Whether it's good or bad, we will find out. We're going to be watching Emilia Perez. I'm already regretting not letting you pronounce that one because I've probably said it wrong, haven't I?
Spot on.
Was I? That's lucky. And that will happen again. And we are comparing it to
Touch of Evil. Did I pronounce that one correctly?
Pretty close enough. About as good as most of my Spanish pronunciation.
Touch of Evil. Orson Welles. God, is it 62 or something? I forget what the year it is, but that's what I'm watching. I'll watch the Emilia Perez thing too, but I'm really looking forward to seeing Touch of Evil again.
Any excuse to watch Touch of Evil. Thanks for joining us as always. We're off to Mexico now, and we will see you next time. Thanks as always.
Excellent.